Drywall repair happens far too many times under many different conditions. There are a lot of reasons why a homeowner needs to have wallboard repair done. Another name commonly used for this is gypsum board. We can use these different names referring to the same product. Drywall, also known as plasterboard, wallboard, sheetrock, gyprock, gypsum board, or gypsum panel, is a panel made of calcium sulfate dihydrate, gypsum, with or without additives, typically extruded between thick sheets of facer and backer paper, used in the construction of interior walls and ceilings. Just about everywhere you look in a home is covered with wallboard to create the space. Even your ceilings, whether you have flat ceilings or stucco ceilings, are of the same material. Most commonly half-inch plasterboard is used in homes. All the rooms such as your living and bedroom and hallway, den and kitchen and so on. There are specially treated drywalls for more secure water resistance, which is called green board, which works and handles exactly the same way as regular drywall does. Except it is more suitable for places of higher moisture content such as around your washroom. Since you have showers and many people have hot steamy showers, you need protection for your wallboards. They have to stay intact even when it's moist. Generally, home builders will put water-resistant gypsum board in kitchen areas around the backsplash and of course washrooms and also laundry rooms. Drywall sizes come in 3 basic thicknesses and 3 basic dimensions. The most common dimension is half-inch drywall and 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. This is your everyday standard sheet of drywall. This you can buy in any bulk home improvement center such as Home Depot or Lowe's. Different sizes and ways you can buy drywall. If you are looking to do some drywall repair, you might need only a portion of this 4x8 sheet of drywall. For convenience, Home Depot will sell a 2x4 piece to you at about the same price as you would buy the whole sheet for. They charge about $5 to manageable sizes 6 for a 2x4 sheet, where you can buy a 4x8 sheet for around $10. But of course, if the sheet is too big, you will have to cut it to manageable sizes that will work for you. Making it easy to do your drywall repair/plaster repair. If you can try not to do your gyprock repair with multiple pieces of drywall because it requires much more work. If you have an area that is, for example, 2x4 and you decide you want to do 2 pieces of 2x2, then you have additional plastering to do, which leads to more work and room for error such as bad sanding. Anatomy of a sheet of drywall. You should know both longitudinal edges of the sheet of plasterboard have a thinner edge. And this edge is designed to allow for taping and muddying, which compensates for the additional tape and plaster that will be applied between the board, joining to enter and drywall sheets. If you tape and plaster 2 cut pieces of drywall, you will have a slight hump because you're putting plaster and tape and more plaster over top of already a full thickness of the board. So beware of this issue. If you are going to tape over to a full thickness adjoining piece of drywall, you will have to make the seam wide enough so it doesn't show as a hump. You will have to spread the plaster wide enough to give it a very slight unrecognizable gradient. Preparing your drywall joints prior to plastering. Sometimes you will notice that your cut edge of the drywall will have paper sort of fraying and separating away from the core, causing some loose paper that will cover properly unless it is cleaned up first. Otherwise, you'll have to apply more plaster if you are not taping it. When plastering holes, this is important to make sure that there is no paper fray because this will cause problems also. Try to remove the fray before applying the plaster. This will make your plastering much easier. Joining to sheets of drywall can be achieved by a couple of different types of plaster tape. One is a paper tape with the crease down the center longitude, allowing for corner taping also. When you are applying tape over drywall joints manually, the quickest way is to run an approximately 3-inch wide drywall plaster layer deposit along the seam, and it should be approximately 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch thick. Seeing where the joint is, place the center of your tape. You will see the crease in the tape indicating the center, and put the crease over top of the joint and then push out by pulling your plaster knife down or along the paper tape, squeezing out the plaster as you move along the tape. Do not push the blade but pull the blade. With your eyes, watch to make sure that you are pressing the paper into moist drywall compound. Also notice to see if you are leaving bubbles behind, air pockets, which are quite noticeable. To start and stop a plaster taping, you need to start 1 or 2 inches away from one end and pull to the other end, and likewise do the same to smooth out the end you started. Using your eyesight, judge what you have done and see if there's an overabundance of plaster or not enough plaster. It is always nicer to have smooth drywall joints than putting a second or third coat over a bumpy joint. The trick is to make a nice wide plaster joint, creating a very smooth transition. Attaching the drywall repair. There are various ways this plaster repair can be done. On smaller cracks and holes, you can use the butterfly method for patching. Simply put, If you have a 2-inch square the hole, you need a 5-inch square piece of drywall. Scribe out in the center of this piece of drywall your 2-inch piece of drywall with a utility knife. Scoring the drywall so it will break on the cleavage point of the score. Strip back the gyprock to the paper, not cutting through the remaining paper, which will be an integral part of the patch. Then apply drywall compound or sheetrock dry mix 45 to the hole and surrounding area that you will be placing the drywall patch and its paper over top of. The paper on the patch will give you support for the piece of drywall just inserted. Then proceed in plastering over the patch to make a smooth. On a larger drywall repair, where you will need some support for the drywall because it is too large an area to be unsupported. This usually is something around 10 inches or so. Mississaugahandyman drywall fixing services usually put a piece of 1x2 board in behind the hole to support the center of the patch. If you are not using the butterfly method, then you will need 2 pieces of wood, 1 on each end and possibly 3 to support the drywall. We use drywall screws to attach the one end of the wood strip into some solid drywall and span the opening to the other half to make a bridge that the new piece of drywall will be able to be screwed to. Once you have cut out your wall board to the right size, fit it in, and then you can either use fiber tape or paper drywall tape. Quick note: try to make the repair piece an accurate piece so that there will not be too much of a gap between the old piece of drywall and the new piece. You don't want a gap there because it will not tape well, they will end up bubbling. Also, do not forget to swipe all the screw heads a couple of times to cover them also with plaster. Finally, plastering the drywall. When you are plastering, think about how much sanding you will do if you are doing a very sloppy plastering job. The more plaster there is left over, the more sanding there will be. Try to do each plaster repair more carefully to avoid excessive amounts of plaster. Plastering requires a certain amount of practice and skill admittedly, but at least you should be aware of the procedure. The whole idea here is to cover drywall tape or fiber tape evenly. Do not try to do all 3 coats at the same time. Your first coat should be able to cover the tape and feather of slightly on both sides by about an inch. Finishing your drywall corners. There are different ways to finishing off a drywall edge or corner. When you're joining drywall at 90°, you can install drywall corner. This corner can either be made from metal, which is the most common, or is made from plastic. Also, there are paper tape metal reinforced corner beads. The paper tape corner beads do not require any drywall screws. They are attached by applying plaster first to the corner and then placing the bead over that. Make sure it is lined up, and then with some mud on your taping knife run a first coat layer down the seam of the edge. If you just need to put a good one on an edge of the drywall protecting the edge from the damage, you can place a metal J mold to protect the plasterboard from damaging. Note: repairs can be done over areas of water damage or previously patched areas. We can repair any repaired area properly on any wall surface, finishing it off with a thin coat/skim coat with our quality professional drywall knife set. Afterwards, we can do a light sanding to give you a perfect flat drywall repair. The thickness of this plaster shouldn't be any more than maybe 1/16 of an inch. And the width of this may be around 4 to 6 inches wide. Now, if you haven't left any bridges and bumps in your plasterwork, then you can continue with the second coat, which will be approximately 8 inches wide, and of course feathering to 0 edges. And then finally laying down a third coat even wider, again attempting a 0 edge. This should reduce any bumps in the drywall. All you have to do is a slight sanding with some 120 grit paper, and then you will be ready for priming. Top 25 Awards. Mississaugahandyman has been selected as one of our most popular home improvement specialists.